Well, time to try and grab some attention through current events. Whoever wins 50% plus one vote of the Electoral College of the United States of America wins the presidency of the United States of America. The United States of America uses the Electoral College to elect its presidents largely out of one simple reason. It's written on the tin. It's the United States of America. The whole political system of the United States was created with the strong consideration of the preservation of the autonomy and the particular socio-economic and political interests of the individual colonies, that is to say, states in the Union. When the Constitution of the United States was being written, there was no singular agreement on how the chief executive of the country, that is to say the president, should be elected. Starting with the obvious, a big national popular vote was problematic, as the number of eligible voters could vary wildly from state to state, as some states implemented a tax census, while others had overwhelming numbers of people that couldn't vote. But the population total still gave the state congressional voting power through very particular mathematics. There was also a general mistrust of the popular vote, as it was seen that the people were not capable of electing federal high offices by themselves, because they thought people would not be able to stay connected and in tune to the developments in national politics to make a discriminating enough choice, and because they thought that the people would be subject to manipulation by populists and demagogues. So because of all of that, the framers were very big fans of indirect representative democracy. The United States legislative system is built to safeguard the interests of the people and the interests of the individual states through elections of representatives who will, hopefully, think, write and vote in the best interests of their constituents and their states. Thus, the U.S. House of Representatives represents the interests of the voters in the congressional district, while the U.S. Senate represents the interests of the individual states. That is why state legislatures appointed senators for the longest time. So why not just have the same representatives elect the president? Well, the whole process of having Congress electing the president was a bit too familiar of how another country elected its first minister. There was a fear that, like MPs in London, representatives would form their own cabals of self-interests and appoint presidents through shady background deals. And looming over all of this is again the matter that the US was still a union of states, all with some form of apprehension towards a federal government. A lot of the framers felt that in line with the ideals of indirect representative democracy and the autonomy of states, the state legislatures, being themselves elected representative bodies, should be the ones together deciding in some way on the president of the Union. And some did think that the idea of the already elected Congress electing the president would be a good idea anyway. But some framers still felt that the people, that is to say the voters, should have a voice in the election to that office. So the writers of the US Constitution came up with a novel solution. Just mash everything together in a grandiose compromise that became known as the Electoral College. The electing of the president would be handled in the first round by delegates known as electors, who are dispatched from the states to the Congress with the sole mission of electing a president. Each state was allocated the nomination of a number of electors equal to the state's total representation in Congress. That is to say, the number of representatives the state has, plus the 2 senators. While the individual states got to decide who these electors are, that is to say, how they vote. I won't get into what happens if the electors change their vote or can't decide on a president. That is to say, no candidate receives an absolute majority of the electoral vote. Short answer is Congress takes over, but I digress. In some cases, states decided to let the voters in each of their individual congressional districts decide who their electors should vote for, allowing for multiple candidates to win the state. In most cases, the state legislature decided who all the state's electors for president would vote for. In fact, this was the most popular method of allocating electors at the start of the United States. Big fans of indirect democracy, as I said. As the US grew more and more democratic, the state legislature ceded their control of the electors to the voters, but maintained the winner-take-all system. This winner-take-all first past the post popular vote method was the one that most states would adopt with time. Why was a winner-take-all method in states adopted instead of some form of proportional allocation? Well, because it maximized party political gain. As partisan politics grew more and more established in states, they saw that dividing the state's electors was only hurting their side, while other states, with a winner-take-all system, gave an advantage to the dominant party or candidate in the state. In the words of Thomas Jefferson, all agree that an election by district would be best if it could be general, but while 10 states choose either by their legislature or by general ticket, it is folly, and worse than folly, for the other 6 not to do it. In these 10 states, the minority is entirely unrepresented, and their majorities have the weight of their whole state in their scale. The Electoral College, as we know it today, is the construct of the very early United States. It is born out of particular state interest, out of distaste for the popular vote and high ideals of indirect democracy, and out of party politics.